I bought this 2014 Yamaha Viking 700 for 600 bucks. Now the guy was originally asking 800. I offered him 5 and he countered me back at 6. For $600 for a 2014 Yamaha Viking, I took it. So I bought this thing from the original owner. So the story he told me is that this unit overheated on him and they had a friend who was a mechanic check it out, and he took it apart but did not put it back together. What he did was took the money for the parts and took off with it. They said they gave him $300 for parts, which $300 ain't gonna cover the parts on this unit, that's for sure. So he took off the cylinder and the head and everything and this side cover, and they had all this covered, but it looks like a little bit of moisture got to it. Nothing too major. I don't know what he was doing to take off the flywheel. That doesn't make any sense. He said it was water pump failure. The water pump was completely seized, but it's moving a little bit when I'm trying to touch it right there. It doesn't feel good, that's for sure. They lost the key, unfortunately, in the process. This thing's been sitting, I think he said 2 years, but we got a little bit of plants growing through it. Now I know personally these vines grow fast, so maybe not too bad. We're definitely missing a battery up here. I think this is gonna be a pretty low hour unit because these are tires from 2013. Everything looks factory. I believe these are what it come with from the factory. So we got date code right there. If I remember right, this is gonna be, they were made the 2nd month, 9th day of 2013. All I know for sure is the last 2 digits or the year model of it. Let's see, I really didn't check this thing out. It was late, steering's tight. Well, the brakes are completely seized. Gas pedal moves. One thing I did check out when I got back home is the air filter. And look at that glorious thing right there. That is not good for your engine. Overall, it's not too bad, especially for 600 bucks. I mean, can't beat it for 600. But the piston rings, they're completely seized. The rod feels good. All that part feels good. They pulled the oil filter for whatever reason. I have yet to see if the gas smelled. The gas doesn't smell rank. It doesn't smell that old. Gas will definitely have to be pumped. Hopefully it doesn't need a fuel pump to go with it. It looks like we'll definitely need at least the middle and that side seat cover if they're obtainable. I did do a little bit of browsing around on parts for this thing. They're not too expensive in parts. The hardest part's gonna be is figuring out where everything goes. Luckily, I did notice that we were missing the muffler right before I left. I do kind of regret the dude had a Arctic Cat DVX 250, and I was like, nah, I don't want to dig that out. It's too cold. And then on the way home, I was like, man, should have at least tried to see what you could get it for. But here are our other parts. This bin's gonna be a problem. The cylinder looks fine. It's dirty, but looks fine. I guess these parts were in the back of the truck or in the bed of the unit. Where I was going with that is all the parts you see missing. Like I have the bed, I have the hood, the glove box, I have all that. It looks like it had doors on it and they are gone. So I might have to try to acquire those. I just seen that. Here's the hinges for them. I don't know, it depends on how much those cost. If they're expensive, I'll probably just skip it. I don't know if these came factory with doors, because it definitely has this aftermarket, probably OEM. And I don't know if this is factory or not. Like I mean, it's factory fit, but I don't know if that's an add-on. I can't think of any Wolverines. I keep wanting to call it a Wolverine. The new ones are called Wolverine R-Max or whatever. Yamaha Vikings that I've seen without roofs. Now the head is definitely gonna have to be disassembled. Probably gonna have to replace the cam because all that rust on it. This stuff was not necessarily protected from the elements. I'm gonna have to pull all that out and clean it up. He said something about these being common for warping the heads when they overheat. So I'm gonna have to check this for warpage. You can see all that rust in there. I mean, at minimum, we're looking at new intake valves. I'm gonna pull those out and check them out. Let's see. This right here, oh man, this is gonna be fun. Trying to figure out where each bolt goes. Because if you have to buy each and every one of these things, that stuff gets expensive fast. And I know in my experience, these starter limiter gears aren't cheap. So I don't know if this thing right here will end up being a part that needs to get cleaned up or if it is just gonna have to get replaced. Yeah, I ain't using that. So it looks like probably cylinder bolts and the head bolts. Both of our cam cap covers. There's a little bit of water in there because we've gotten a lot of snow over the last few days. Stuff was in the bed of my truck. Shifter detent. Why would they take that off? So reassembling all of this, look, an air chuck. I don't think that goes to it. These bolts here, you know, I'm good at figuring out where these go. There's a method where you can kind of like stick them in. You just kind of put them all in, and if you've got the right bolt, you'll have the right distance right there. Looks like a flywheel nut. It's one bed bolt. That don't go to this. So that's not a good thing. It means we've got extra stuff in here that I have no idea what it goes to. The hell is that? It almost looks like some sort of power valve. I'm definitely gonna have to buy the manual for this thing. At least the bolts aren't trash. I'm gonna have to get that drained out and dry today. So this one's gonna be a fun one for sure. I'm gonna have some work on the brakes. Here's our master. Well, we got fluid in there. I'm not gonna lie, this one's a little bit intimidating, being that it's already been taken apart and I'm not familiar with these units. But I think I may take this one on. I think there's a bunch of parts in there that don't go to this. Like that shift tent, there's nowhere for that to go. All this shit's dirty too. I'm gonna have to find a way to clean that out. And the only way I know to clean it out is fill it full of diesel and you just kind of flush it. That shift tent don't go to it. So we got a bunch of bolts over there with a bunch of, I don't know what that goes to. So as of this point, I don't know whether I want to tear this completely out of the bike, take the whole motor out and do a full rebuild on it, or at least rebuild and replace what I know needs replaced, or clean it out and rebuild it in the machine, put a new top end on it, new water pump in it. If I was the one to take this apart, yeah, I would just rebuild it in the unit. The downside is I can't tell if the oil pump is gonna be damaged and there was oil starvation issues. So I think I'll build this one. It's gonna be a fun challenge. As I'm looking at it, this right here goes in the cam. And that, it's not a shift attempt. It goes all together like that, and it is a decompression. Everything moves freely, so I don't know. We may just need to clean some of this stuff up. Especially this. I'm going through this stuff, cleaning. See what would actually need replaced and what won't. So as I'm looking at it, it's definitely gonna need a cylinder. Somebody honed this, trying to make it look good after I cleaned it up. Look at that pitting. There's just no way that I'm running that cylinder. So luckily the cylinders for these aren't too terrible. I think I can still be in this thing less than 1,500 fixed. So that's $900 worth of parts, roughly. And it's worth quite a bit. These Vikings aren't cheap. So you might be wondering, how did we get to this point? Because I was just talking about fixing it in the motor. Well, fixing the motor with it in here. So I got to looking and I'm like, man, I just don't know if I want to build this in there. And I'm glad I didn't. Started to notice like this is broken. This is like an elbow that connects to there and like every pin on it's broken. There's a ton of stuff to take apart on this unit. Golly. Just to get that out, you know, I had to tear all the seats out. But anyway, so I'm looking at the motor. I'm looking like all the oil's drained back now, but all that stuff has ended up in there. And like, it looks so much worse now that it's actually out. How much debris is actually in here. This chain is rusted. I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be fairly tight, not that loose. The rust on this stuff, like I can clean that up, and if not, then I can, you know, I can replace it. It's fairly cheap. The dirt right there on top's from me pulling it, but there's leaves, all sorts of debris in this bottom end. I'm just not comfortable fixing it in there and sending it out like that, trying to wash it out with diesel. If this thing had been stored better, then yeah, it probably could. But at the same time, like, you know, he said that the water pump was seized. It's not. I don't know if they broke it free. Maybe they broke it free. I am kind of concerned that the oil pump failed. And if the oil pump failed and I put it all back together, it's not gonna be good. We're just gonna blow it up shortly after. And with the rings being seized, I mean, this doesn't look like it's ever been cared for very well. So yeah, I decided to pull the engine. I'm gonna tear this thing down and see what other parts I might need internally. If this thing needs an oil pump, I'd rather do it all at once. But the bolts and stuff, I've been kind of going through this bin and checking because I want to make sure that I order everything, or at least to the best I can. And running all this stuff through the ultrasonic, trying to get it cleaned up. I probably need to clear clean this fluid out of here again, but it's all right. It's cleaning it all up fairly well. This, I thought I wouldn't be able to run this, but it's good getting all this, just because there was so much nasty buildup in these things. I need a bigger ultrasonic so I could like run the whole head through. And like as I'm looking at it, like the intake valves on the head are toast, but the exhaust valves were just fine. So I'd be curious if this thing sat open for a period of time. I mean, it's kind of weird that that air filter, to be that deteriorated, this thing's had to have been sitting for a while or had zero maintenance. That's the only way that would make sense. I've never seen one deteriorate like completely like that. Like even if you saw last week's video with the Honda, that 420's air filter, that thing had sat for, they said 10 years, and that filter wasn't as deteriorated as this one. Maybe they bought it and never changed the filter. I mean, this thing's a 14, and that's the only time I've ever seen those filters deteriorate like that is if they're never changed. I don't know, there's no way. As I've been tearing it down, I did find that there was something in here, like some kind of stereo system or something, or maybe an auxiliary battery, I don't know. But I found so much stuff in this bottom area. There's like some gloves, there's some toys, some things to go on top of a can so you could drink it like a bottle. And I guess it's been eye-opening, like, you know, good thing that I did take it all apart because there's so much I'm finding that's broken. And the engine is of concern. Since I didn't take it apart, I don't know if anything critical is missing. Now I know I have to wait for the snow to thaw out in the back of my truck to be able to check and see if there's certain parts back there. I'm pretty sure I have a starter gear back there and 2 oil lines. And I'm just gonna have to spend a bunch of time looking at schematics to figure out what I have and what I don't have. But while this is all apart like this, I can get all this all cleaned out. So it's all torn down and the oil pump actually looks fine. So there was no oil pump failure. But like, if you look at all the dirt and grit that's in the bottom of this, that is exactly why I wanted to take it apart and make sure that it's not, that's how many, like it's just full of leaves. And I don't want to rebuild it like that. I got the manual, got parts ordered for this thing. Now we're just waiting on parts. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. We've got like, I've sorted through everything, looked at what's trash and what looks good. Like that was what came out of the oil filter union. I still have to clean a bunch of this stuff. You know, overall, luckily I did end up finding the other bed bolt. These have apparently are reusable. I was kind of worried about that. But I mean, aside from, this is probably the most parts I've ever ordered. Oh, I need to run that some more. I done got it all nasty. I'm leaving it in there overnight. I went and picked something else up last night, so this kind of got put on standstill. Now I'm just gonna clean it all up and keep everything organized, because I'm gonna be honest with you, this is, for somebody who's never split cases with a transmission in it, the Polaris one's, the transmission's separate, so I've never actually split cases. All of this has to get cleaned, all of it has to be organized. I don't want to put it together, but I got the manual. I'm not gonna do any type of videoing on me building the motor just because that's a little, rather be able to just focus on it. All right, so we're back. Finally got a ton of parts in for the Viking, and now it's time to start getting some stuff installed. So we got up here, there's just a ton of new old stock, not new old stock, it's all new parts. New spark plug, exhaust springs, like we were missing so much little stuff. I'm just gonna put a total of how much I spent on the engine instead of each individual part, because I think in total it's quite a bit. New cylinder and all the used replacement covers. This is hood latches. We've got all our gaskets. And I'm hoping I'm not missing anything. There's a new air filter, oil filter. What was this? There's so much stuff, I don't even know what all's here. I just checked to make sure I got it. Oh, new thermostat, new OEM thermostat. Some more parts here. I don't remember what that is either. That's water pump. Exhaust donut seals, because everything was missing. Got some of the push pins. New battery. Big box full of used stuff. Replaced the whole air box. Front master. new ignition, and this is one of the pins. I messed that up. Whoops. That one's my fault. I messed it up. New seats. Now these I am not gonna say that I'm super duper happy with, because they have a texture to them. You can see that. And then here, factory seats look like. This is one of the ones we're replacing. See, it's smooth. I guess the newer ones come with a textured look to them. And so one of my 3 bases, which are identical, is gonna be slightly different. Or yeah, one of the 3 is gonna be slightly different because of that. And it is what it is. There's not a whole lot I could do about that, but I'm gonna get this engine put back together today and hopefully get it dropped back in there. We've had so many shipping delays. One of them was due to, it got lost. Oh yeah, new piston. Got a new Pro X piston right here. Yeah. You know what a piston looks like. But I bought new gaskets for everything like that. New O-ring here, new gasket for there. There was some of this stuff got replaced. This tensioner thing right here got replaced. It's a lot of parts. I think in total it's 40 to 50 parts in total ordered for this unit. And now I have to figure out how to put it all back together, which is definitely gonna be the fun part. So I'm gonna start with what I know and work my way back. I did print out the manual, all 500 pages at 10 cents a piece. So 50 bucks for a new manual. I prefer pen and paper versus looking at it online. At least with pen and paper, I can put it all up on the board right there. So while I'm putting the engine together, I make sure I don't miss any like little washers that are supposed to go in there or anything of that sort, just to make sure that this thing goes back together 100% how it's supposed to be, and it fires right up. I am not gonna record myself building this engine just because I prefer to just be able to focus on what I'm doing, the job at hand. And this is a task to try to take half an engine that I took apart 2 weeks ago, and then half of it somebody else took apart, no telling how long ago, and put it back together and have her running up nice and good. And there's a lot of parts here. I mean, there's a ton of stuff to remember how to put back together. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a lot of fun. All of this up here has to be cleaned, disassembled and cleaned. This is as far as I got this weekend. Got everything over there on. Over here, I made a mistake and I ordered a water pump kit that did not come with the oil pump seal. So that seal goes right in there, and obviously this goes in from the other side. It's just shoved in there so I didn't lose it. And it seals the oil from going in. And I spent a bunch of time looking for this circlip and didn't catch that until I was looking at the schematic and saw that little seal on there, and I was like, oh wait, I did not install that. So luckily I caught that. Turns out you can't get a C-clip for that anywhere local, which the kit that I bought originally didn't come with, but the kit I bought this second go around that comes with that, comes the oil seal and the C-clip. So we're good to go there. And as I'm putting this together, I'm right here at the end. I was gonna put the CCT in and set the valves, and then tomorrow when that piece comes in, be able to just button it all up and be done with it. But no, went to take the cam chain tensioner apart to clean it, and it grenaded. So evidently that has to be replaced now. And from the get-go, I kind of was thinking about replacing it. I cleaned it up and thought it looked all right. It's gonna cost me a few days now. And it's a bummer. It is what it is. I will say on this has taken me a lot longer than I thought it would. I don't even want to mention how much time I've got into putting this engine together. Just doing it the slow, figure it out, and it worked. So everything shifts. I don't know, as I'm sitting here doing this, I'm thinking to myself, you know, I've had a lot of comments on the channel, man, how much time do you value your time that you put into this? And that's what I'm thinking about as I'm doing this, but at the same time, it reminded me when I first started, and I would only do like carb jobs and stuff like that. And just the easy piddly stuff, axles. I asked a friend of mine, I was like, hey man, He owned a power sports shop down in near Dallas. So I asked him, I was like, hey man, do you think going to that MMI is worth it? You know, because I'd have to relocate to Orlando for, I think it was like 9 months. And at the time it was 60 grand. And he told me, he's like, man, you got a pretty good mechanical aptitude with this stuff. You know, the schooling is gonna teach you a lot, but you think about that, it was 60 grand at the time, and that was probably 2014. I haven't looked since. Plus all the moving and doing all that. And then you gotta figure out a way to make money when you get there. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, but you know, you could make money right now doing the stuff, and then that leaves you room to make $60,000 worth of mistakes. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, you know, as I'm spending so much time on this, it's like, it's learning. Now it's time spent learning. And honestly, this really wasn't that bad putting together like this. I can still put my oil lines and stuff on. I was kind of worried about those because they come like down here and go up there. And a lot of this stuff, I want to say a lot of it though, I spent a shit ton of time cleaning, So I like ran most of it through the ultrasonic that I could. Everything looks a whole lot better. This is all that stuff that was in the box. And like the oil cooler was packed full of stuff. Like I spent so much time cleaning. If I would have just slapped a top end on that thing and sent it, that thing would have lasted 30 minutes before it grenaded. If that. So it's been a lot of time cleaning. I think I've got 2 days in this engine now, just taking my time, putting it together. Probably a total of 12 hours, which is more than it should take, but that's rebuilding the valves or rebuilding the head, cleaning, you know, lapping new valves in, doing all that, completely cleaning everything. And this thing was disgusting. I need another parts washer because right now the parts washer I'm using is a tub full of diesel. It's what I did when I started doing used parts, so it worked. And that's why if you're noticing the difference in color here, this side, I got this side real hot to drop the crank in, get that bearing seated in there. Got a couple more days on this thing. I guess tomorrow I'll come out here and plug away on and get the battery and stuff in and front master on, get the brakes going. And then hopefully I'm not missing anything else. I really thought this was gonna be an ordeal putting this motor together in pieces. It's just, if I take my time looking at it, most of these bolts must go to mounting. There was some stuff in there that did not go to this unit. So while I'm waiting on parts to get the engine wrapped up and be done with it, I'm gonna go ahead and take care of some other stuff this unit needs. One of the big issues is this positive battery cable right here. This terminal is, well, screwed. The wire is broken for whatever reason. I don't know if they tied into it or whatever, but we're going to get that fixed so that whenever everything comes in, we're good to go. Plus, gotta get the battery in, get the new ignition on there, and see how many hours this thing actually has. I honestly don't think it's that much. I'm gonna put a guess, 250 hours, 3,000 miles. Or less. It's not gonna be over that. Now, I would have just replaced this, but new was on back order for a pretty long period of time, and used were not available on eBay, and I cannot seem to find anybody parting one of these out local. You think that would be easy to find, but no. Evidently not. But that's all right, considering this thing wasn't exactly a cheap piece either. It's like $60 for this little connector. I mean, it does have this little fuse relay built into it. Still, 60 bucks. Cool beans. Heat shrunk. All right, now we need to get our new latches on the hood. Hopefully these are right. Take these old pieces out. There goes that one. And doesn't look like they're sided. It is. How was the other one in there? Bottom part to that. Pop that clip in. I'll tell you what, that does not fit as good as these OEM ones look like they did fit. All right, we're gonna slide that on there. The ignition is in, and for once, I hope this fuel line squirts all over my floor. What'd I say, 250 hours, 3,000 miles? Oh yeah. Shit, that was a lot more than I was expecting. All right. How do I do this one? Diff lock. Oh. Four-wheel drive's working. At least the actuator is. Dang, that thing's noisy. Lights work. Check engine lights on. Well, I checked. Engine's not in there. Done a bunch of codes. 128 hours. Where do I find the miles? What does battery mean? 11 volts. I might need to charge that. Let's burn the battery. This thing telling me to check my helmet. I'm not wearing no helmet on this thing. There's no way this is fast enough to need a helmet. We're here shifting this thing. Trying to get the reverse light to turn off. I'm like, what the hell? There's no motor in it. The sensor's not in there. Dude. I can't get to the miles. I'll have to Google it. So the miles come up right there. I didn't even think about, I shouldn't have turned that back on. There's fuel going everywhere. The miles come up right here. So we're gonna have to wait until I get the engine back in to see how many miles are on it. But I was right on the hours. I mean, for the amount of wear that's on these tires, they look like factory tires. This machine just looks like it was poorly cared for. Not that big a deal though. Easy fix. And it looks like we're close to E on the gas tank. We're not gonna turn that key back on until we hook the throttle body back up. All right, so I got the motor in and realized I put it in backwards. This was not as hard as I was expecting it to be with it being more complete. I just gotta finagle it and don't tear anything up. That is not to say this is not a heavy motor. This thing is very heavy. But I thought the head and piston and all that being on there and, you know, being complete would be a lot heavier. There we go. Now we just got bolted down. Put everything else back in, and then tomorrow when I get the cam chain tensioner in, I can put that in. I already set the valves and everything, so we should be good to go there. So while I have somebody here to help me today, my wife can help me actually bleed these brakes. I thought, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and swap the master out, and then we'll bleed the brakes, call it good. And I run into something, this is a first for me. It is not the master that is locked up. This brake pedal is locked up on here. I have no idea how I'm gonna get that free. That is crazy. And it looks like someone bent it trying to press the brake. Gas pedal works just fine. Brake pedal won't move at all. So I'm gonna soak it in that. Maybe try a little bit of heat, but unfortunately I've already pulled that. It's on me because I would have caught this if I would have pulled the clevis off of there first. But I thought, hey, I could swap the master without replacing the clevis. This little thing right here on the back. Because that looks like it's gonna be a little bit of a pain to get in and out. And I thought, yeah, I can just leave the stick in there. Because the stick, it's like a two-part assembly on this. This is the other half. So now I'm replacing a master unnecessarily. I'm a little worried about getting underneath there with heat with all these plastics, with all the brake pedal switch and all that, and I will if I have to, but hopefully we can get that freed up. After lots of heating and beating, and if you notice all this red stuff down here, she's good to go. Got it all pulled off, took the air hammer, this is crayon. So I don't know if y'all have seen that where you like heat it up and you use a crayon. The only thing I did ruin the spring that was right here or right here, getting it a little too hot, whichever spring it was. So I'm gonna have to replace that spring, which I think I've got one. I got a huge stash of parts. I think this one right here will get the job done. So we're good to go in that department. Now I just gotta get the master put on and all that. I'm gonna use the new master that I bought just because I'd rather not risk it and put the other one back on just for the chance to save 20 bucks. My time is worth well more than that. So we'll put the new one on and go from there. Then we're gonna go ahead and fill it up with some brake fluid. Brakes are bled, we just need to get this thing put back together. And basically, I'm gonna start with what I know, what I took apart, and then work my way back from there. Well, we're starting with the cam chain tensioner. I put the old one that's broken in there. So I dropped the engine in. We didn't have anything going in with it. Dirt or debris getting in that engine. You know, it's nerve-wracking though. As I'm looking on the floor and I see a wrist pin and I'm like, Damn, did I put the wrist pin in? Not wrist pin, one of the wrist pin clips. Just gonna make sure. I'm gonna turn the engine over by hand, make sure we're all good. Plus, at this point, I can double check my timing. Make sure we're good in that department. It's easier to double check than it is to eat a valve or something. Looks good. I'd rather double check than be wrong or have catastrophic engine failure. I don't remember exact numbers, but I've got a few bucks tied up in this thing. Far more than double what I paid for it in parts. That's just parts alone. Just make sure everything's done right the first time. When I pulled this engine, this came off with the engine. This is a coolant line that goes to what they call an oil cooler right there. Now that oil cooler, the oil runs through that and through the filter and back into the engine. But the coolant runs through it as well and comes through this hose and pops back on that little nipple right there. Well, it runs underneath the engine, which is probably would have been better to have that on when I put the engine on, but now we got to fight it to get it underneath. And so my game plan kind of is going to do that, hook up the other coolant line, just make sure all of our coolant lines are hooked up. Go ahead and put coolant in it. I got a gallon of antifreeze and this thing's dry. I have no idea how much it holds, but a gallon's probably pretty close to it, and that might leave us with nothing to spare. I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So we might have to go get some. No big deal though. We'll get oil in it. I already got the oil. That thing is such a pain in the ass. You can't get it on video very well because it's dark down there. But it's that fitting right there going onto that silver thing. All right, let's get this thing zipped back together. We can call it a day on this unit. Everything's together except for I didn't mount the centrifugal clutch, or I did not mount the clutches or the clutch cover. I want to make sure all that doesn't leak. But now we're ready for the moment of truth. It is time to fire this thing up. Not gonna lie, just a tad bit nervous. Build some pressure in that fuel system. Look at that. 1,300 miles. What'd I say it was gonna be? 3,000? Yeah. All right, let's try it. Almost. Put some pressure in it. Woo-hoo-hoo. Woo-wee. I was a tad bit nervous. This was a task for me, that's for sure. We're shaking a lot back here. No, we're missing something. An upper motor mount or something. Shit. That's not good because I don't think I have it. I've gone through and seen about most of what I have, and that's not on the list. Got a lot of vibrations out of this unit, but she's looking good. So we should have something there. I bet it mounts to here. Yep. Bummer. Now it's time to bleed the coolant stuff. Be good to go from that point. So I lost the audio for this little section right here, but this, I basically ended up putting the clutches on after finding out that there's not actually an upper motor mount bracket for this unit. And now it's time to take this thing for a test drive. You know, it fires right up now. Runs absolutely great. The vibrations kind of went down once I put the clutches in versus what they were prior to that. Let's go for a rip and dip. Test ride this thing, see how it rides. I've never driven a Viking before, and I'll tell you what, this was much smoother than I expected. As far as compared to most of the Rangers that I've dealt with on the channel, this is way smoother. Much more comfortable as well. It just overall a better ride feel. Maybe I guess it might be more comparable to like a General or something. I've yet to ride one of those either, but everything's nice and tight. This thing rode great, drove great. And here we're going to test out the four-wheel drive. It's kind of a mud hole. It slips if you don't have four-wheel drive. It's not enough to worry about getting stuck in, but it's enough to be able to test out four-wheel drive. And four-wheel drive works just fine. And man, this unit feels pretty powerful for being a 700 versus like the 700 Polarises don't quite feel the same. I have no idea what I'm saying here. Probably something about eating lunch because I was hungry. Okay, so got to bed while I was out there riding around. Oh shit. Gonna go ahead and get this thing mounted. It is covered in ants now though. Ants decided to make a nice little nest underneath where I had this thing sitting. So. Got a brand new OEM bed shock. I guess. It goes onto this side. Now we're ready to wrap this thing up, knock it out, get it done and over with. Just a couple plastic pieces and then all the seat bolts. That goes just like that. Goes up there. Got a bunch of new pins. Because this takes a different style than what I normally use, and this looks too small. Yeah, that's too small. These ain't gonna work. Maybe my other push pins will actually work in there though. These are the ones I bought. I thought they were the same thing, just slightly different part number because they weren't flathead. Because those flathead style ones, like that right there, like that one, were more expensive. And I was like, well, I'll just convert them all over. Wrong. Let's try these other traditional ones. They're a bit more snug than those others. They work fine on the plastic parts. So these ones that have metal, we'll have to have the used ones I had. So far this thing's coming along. We kind of got to a little snag and I need to wash it to really go any further with it, but it's dark out. I don't have enough light outside to be able to see to wash it, because like if you wash this stuff and try to get this oxidation off and really get into it, it's just gonna have a bunch of lines on it. And I'm probably gonna end up having to go over it with the heat gun to bring some of this blue back out of it. So it's gonna have to wait till tomorrow when it's daylight and I can see. Put some stuff on the seats, because sometimes these old seats, you get a little dry rot, you go to sit on it and just rip. So I don't wanna have to buy more seats. So I got it washed this morning. And it looks all right. It's a little faded. I'm gonna try to bring some of that back. It's definitely, this side is less faded than the other side. As you can tell, that's not just the lighting. That's actually, it doesn't even look as bad in the camera as it does in person. I'll probably still end up having to wash it, but I did put these seats in, and having the texture doesn't really throw it off. I was really worried about that, but I want to try to bring this back, try to make this look better. Probably some of that. So I'll take the heat gun and just use, it's slow. It's a slow ass process. It's gonna take a while to do this whole thing, but should come out looking pretty good. I'm still waiting on a couple little pieces, and gotta plug that there tire, because obviously there's a screw in it. But the parking brake pads, I didn't want to sell this thing needing something. Like, I didn't want it to be like, all it needs is fill in the blank here. I hate selling stuff like that, so I'm going to order the parking brake pads. They should be here tomorrow. They're overnighted in, hopefully, if there are no delays. And this thing will be good to go. I've rode it a little bit now, and I'll be honest with you, I like it. It's a lot to say. The ride feel, this is much smoother than I was expecting. I like it. And the key to this is never stay in one spot for too long. See? Now, just to do the whole rest of it, and bedsides, Might take me a little bit. And look at that, a little bit of elbow grease. Goes pretty far. Brought that from being like that gray looking stuff to it's pretty black now. I mean, it's not perfect. Really brought out some other blemishes it had, but no big deal. So here's just to give an example, like how much of a difference that makes. Like my phone is changing the color a little bit. This is a technique to get this to look good. I mean, you can see there's some flaws in it, and maybe I'm just particular about it, but it looks a lot better than the oxidation. So that's been done. Oxidized. Dash made 100% difference. That one's been done. I'm gonna let my wife do this one because honestly, she's better at it than me, but I'm not gonna tell her that. All right, so now we just wait for some pads to come in tomorrow and this thing will be good to go. All right, so we got the parts in. It's raining pretty heavy, so I hope y'all could hear, but we got new brake pads. Ended up having to buy a whole set. That was the only way to get these in quickly. So I'm gonna replace these, and I might replace all of them, I'm not sure. Since I have them, it doesn't need them, but I have them. These look just like the Trail D, which is a brand on Amazon, and that's what I have on my Outlander. They have been great pads on that Outlander. My OG pads from the factory, I managed to get like, it was nothing out of them, like 100 miles. I am heavy on the brakes, but I've been heavy on the brakes with those Trail D pads too. And I'm sitting somewhere around 600 miles. So they've held up better than OEM. But I kind of looked up how this works, just so I don't have to fight with it. Looks pretty easy to do. You got that bolt, and there's one down below it. Then you can pull the caliper out of here, swap the pads, stick it back on. These are pretty much the same thing for the wheels. So I'm gonna swap this out, get that pulled. This thing will be good to go up for sale today. Woo, a little dirty. Slides don't really want to move a whole lot, so I'm gonna take this whole thing apart, clean it up. It's caked. Can't really get to it while you're washing this thing from the outside. So I'm gonna clean this up before I put it back in there. I don't want a nasty caliper going back in. That's about as good as it's gonna get without doing some sort of full teardown. Now it's just time to put this thing back on. Parking brake is on. Let's see if that solved our parking brake problem. I guess not. All right, got it. Just had to adjust the cable a little bit. It's not wanting to pull as tight, but I don't know, that's probably adjustment in the cable, probably the cable itself, but it works. Parking brake works. The light lights up. This isn't a brand new machine, so everything's not gonna be as tight and nice as a brand new machine, so that part's good to go. So I guess that's it on this one. It's all done. Now, this thing went from an absolute basket case to it's a pretty nice unit now. These seats, they blend in pretty good. They don't, I was worried about it looking really bad in here, but like, it's not of concern when you're looking at it. Like nothing looks out of place. But everything cleaned up pretty good. Low miles, low hours. What was that? 1,300 hours, 1,300 miles, 128 hours. Which will probably go up by the time this thing gets sold because I am gonna ride it some. But right now it is pouring down rain. half the trails that I ride on just to get over there, my creek is flooded, so there's no getting back there. But that's how it turned out. This thing has nothing wrong with it now, and it is ready to sell. This one's a hard one for me because the prices are all over the place. 2014 was the first year of the Yamaha Viking, and I think in 2017 they quit calling it the Viking and started calling it the Wolverine. But as far as I know, and I could be very wrong on this, the only difference is a front end restyling. I know that under the cab, it all looks the same. When I was looking up comparable units, I think this is about a $5,500, $5,300 unit. $5,300 is my target. I don't know what the market's like for Yamahas, or a Yamaha side-by-side like this, so I don't know how long these sit online. I know when I looked on Marketplace sold listings, yes, there's a way that you can look at sold listings on Facebook Marketplace that is difficult to get to, and I don't know how to explain it. Every time I do, it's through my computer. When I look at the sold listings, there are a bunch of these sold, like the 14, 15, 16s. There's a lot of them actually sold from like 4,500 to, you know, 5,400. Most of the stuff that is less than 4,500 has like severely worn out tires, smokes, all the seats are ripped, and it's actually pretty rough. This thing, I mean, you just hop on it and ride. It needs nothing. Check out that dump bed action. It's clean. Now this, I know earlier in the video I mentioned how much it seemed like the engine moved around a whole lot. Once everything was on, once it's all together, it's not so bad. It seems, I guess what I'd put as normal, where when everything was off, the clutches were off, it seemed like it was vibrating a lot. I guess a lot of this stuff back here helps dampen that. There's no upper motor mount for these though, which is stupid. This one's a pretty good profit. Now I have a lot of labor in it. If I were to guesstimate how much labor I have in it, and just being honest, we're talking 40 hours. With the profits I make from this machine, that's actually much more than I would make at any kind of day job, that's for sure, unless I join the oil field. It's another one down, and if you've noticed in the background, next project is right there. It's time to get started on that, and y'all stay tuned for the next one. I gotta get that thing wrapped up. The camo one's not mine. That's not gonna be featured. Be sure to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. A little bonus round for you. Man, honestly, I kind of enjoyed taking this from like a straight up basket case to a nice rideable unit. This is, I think, the second time I've done something like that was already in pieces. The last one was that Razor 800 a few months back. And I mean, it's really cool to take it from that position to this position. And don't get me wrong, it's stressful and expensive when it goes to buying parts. But like, as far as like achievement, like you took it from this to this, that's pretty cool. So I might do some more stuff like this and try to find some more stuff that's just a basket case, just to see if I can bring it back to life. I mean, this unit was probably borderline just parted out kind of unit. And surprisingly, when it came down to it, like the engine parts there was a dowel and one bolt that I ended up finding afterwards that I did have that I ordered. Aside from that, I was short like 3 bolts that I wasn't able to find. And they were just the standard like little short bolts that have the 8mm head on them. I think they're technically called a 6mm bolt. What do you think? Like, if you made it this far into the video, an hour in, this is like the last, minute of the video. If you made it this far into the video, like, what do you think? Is this pretty cool to you to bring something like this back to life? Maybe at some point I'll do like a 2-stroke, like a blaster. You just take a straight clap wagon and bring it all the way back, but there's not a lot of profit margin on that, and I don't have any interest in keeping a blaster or a Razor 1000. That would be where it's at.